Maybe this is what comes to mind when you think about AI.
Come with me if you want to live.
Or maybe this.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
Or possibly even this.
High-tech anal beads vibrating in a chess grandmaster's ass to transmit the best possible moves.
God, I hope it's not that. It seems like a week doesn't go by these days without some existential anxiety-provoking story about AI just dominating the headlines. The latest has been a bit of a double whammy, with both Lensa AI and ChatGPT supposedly coming for all our jobs faster than a toupee in a hurricane. Along with all this panic/rage comes some very interesting questions about what creativity and inspiration really mean. And personally, I'm quite fascinated by this topic because not only am I a musician, okay, well, we can debate on whether what I play is music or not. Let's just say I play musical instruments. Not only do I play musical instruments, but before I decided to waste my time making YouTube videos, I worked as a data scientist for a number of years. And that gives me a bit more of a nuts and bolts kind of perspective on this topic in particular. But with that being said, I am not an expert.
I don't know shit, I don't get stuff, and I don't understand things.
Saying you're an expert in AI is like saying you're an expert in biology or anime or food. The field is so large and diverse that you can only really be an expert in one particular aspect of it. So now that's out of the way, let me put you out of your misery. Are tools like Lensa AI and ChatGPT and Midjourney and Dalle going to put an end to human creativity as we know it and just destroy creative jobs? No. Just kidding. Nothing's ever that simple, and there are always caveats, right? Make no mistake, these systems are incredibly powerful, but they're just tools. Despite the field being called artificial intelligence, these systems are not conscious and there's no cognition involved. Sure, at their core, they're inspired by how the human brain works, but that's basically where the similarity ends, right? Using systems like ChatGPT or Midjourney or Dalle, you can generate incredibly sophisticated output, right? All the way from essays to paintings. But to do so in any meaningful way, you're required to develop very specific prompts that involve a lot of experimentation, right? In some cases, I'd argue that it takes more effort to go through that process than to do the thing yourself. I originally wanted to write the script using ChatGPT 3, just like every other YouTuber of late, but it ended up being easier for me to just write it myself. With this in mind, I think it's important to note that there's been contest-winning art that's been generated using Midjourney. Admittedly, it took the guy weeks worth of experimenting with different prompts to create the final output, but there are plenty of people who would argue that weeks is far better than years to learn the artistic skills that are necessary to make something that's comparable, right? But I don't think it's quite so straightforward. First of all, let's just discount all of the personal growth and development that's involved in learning all of those skills and how they could just benefit you in other ways. But if we take a look at the actual piece of winning art, you'll see that there's actually quite a lot of artifacts present in the painting. And these are normal, they're part of the generative process, and you'll find them in any image that's been generated using one of these models. There are many who would claim that this artwork should have been disqualified because of those artifacts. If a human being had made it, they wouldn't be there. And the only way to rectify those artifacts, at the moment at least, would be through the use of skillful human curation. When it comes down to it, I think the biggest users of technology like Midjourney and Dalle will be visual artists themselves, as they have the underlying knowledge required to use it most effectively, right? These systems can assist tremendously with inspiration, and they can help accelerate the ideation process, and ultimately that allows for the rapid development of finished output with a lot less effort. But not only that, they offer new avenues for creativity. Just take a look on YouTube. There's been a surge lately in music videos that were created from stitched together images, where the images were generated using the lyrics of the songs as prompts for a generative model like Dalle. Some of them are actually really cool. Some of them are pretty terrifying. But let's get real here. In the case of Lensa AI, most of the people that were using it were not going to go to an artist to have a portrait painted anyway. But I think it would be incredibly naive to believe that everything will simply just carry on as it was before. There will be users who would have gone to an artist in the past that will now use generative services purely because of the cost advantage. They may not care about the artifacts or the time and effort required to determine the correct prompts. Will it destroy the industry? Nah, I don't think so. But will it impact it? Yes, absolutely. We've talked about visual art and writing. What about other forms of art? Music, film, all that kind of stuff. Well, generative content in those areas is also already here. In fact, I think it's significant to note that using machines to generate music is actually nothing new. Generative music has been around for nearly 30 years at this point, and algorithmic composition goes back hundreds of years. You might even say that composition itself is an algorithmic process. AI is just the next logical step. AI was used to generate a song in the style of a Eurovision Song Contest submission, and it's good.
There's no life without your life in misery.
Strange, sure, but it's good. As with AI-generated visual art, it was curated to get it that way. Purely generative music is not as sophisticated. The dynamic nature of the inputs and outputs adds an extra layer of complexity when it comes to generating convincing music. However, even in their current form, I think these systems can be very powerful tools for musicians. For example, the sample generation opportunities for electronic music is just limitless with this sort of stuff, right? And let's not forget the plethora of non-generative AI-based tools that are already available for musicians to use. There's software that allows for the automated mastering of already mixed songs and for the removal of specific instruments from a completed song. Tools that are most effectively used by people who already have the foundational knowledge in music production. There's another elephant in the room we need to talk about though, which involves the ethical development of the models themselves. One pressing question that's come up since Lensa AI hit the scene has been, was art stolen to create the underlying model which powers the app? Almost all AI models need to be trained on data, no matter what the task. In the case of Lensa AI, the developers claim an open dataset was used, and these types of datasets are constructed normally by scraping the web. This is a process that uses bots to navigate the internet and capture data that meets certain criteria. Clearly, the work of specific artists was used in the training of the Lensa model, as you can see mangled signatures in some of the generated portraits. Did the dataset maintainers or Lensa AI ask for permission from the artists to use their work? Did they pay them? The answer is almost certainly no. This controversy has raised some interesting philosophical questions around what is inspiration really, and what is creativity. And as an example, if you create a painting in the style of Van Gogh with your own hands, should you pay the descendants of Van Gogh money? And I mean, it's definitely an interesting thought, and I think it does require consideration going forwards. But in this case, I actually think it distracts from the real practical issue. And I think we can solve it simply with existing precedent on the internet. For example, when you sign up to services like Facebook or YouTube, you consent to having your data used to improve their models. Sure, you have some agency in the amount of data that's collected, and to be quite frank, this is a relatively recent development, right? But no matter what, if you use their services, some data is always collected and used, and it's mainly to try and service you more relevant ads that they're making money off of. The key here is that you consented. Did the artists consent to having their data used? Probably not. Most likely, the services that they uploaded their content on, which were the sites that were scraped, made no provisions for anyone on the site's works to be used in things like model training. Certainly not in the terms of service of the site. Many websites don't allow scraping as part of their terms of service because of this sort of stuff, among other things. LinkedIn's a perfect example of this. And this is hardly the first time something like this has happened. Github Copilot is an AI that was trained off of the entire code base inside GitHub. The aim was to develop a system that could assist programmers with writing efficient code using minimal effort. And it sounds like a great idea, right? The big problem was that Copilot started writing code for programmers that used patented code. The model was trained on data it should not have had access to in the first place. Mistakes like this happen all the time, and they're surprisingly easy to make, actually. Very often they happen simply because of the unknown internal biases of the engineers and scientists that are building these models. To complicate the problem even further, a lot of smaller companies in the space have no structures in place, to prevent mistakes like this from happening, and have no ethics committees to guide what is and what isn't proper use of the technology. Hell, in the case of big tech, ethics committees vary from effectively toothless on the one side all the way to straight up batshit crazy on the other. All of this is further muddied by the fact that definitions and boundaries that used to be really concrete, like what intelligence actually means, are now being warped and nebulous. Research in the development of more sophisticated AI appears to forge on without much thought to the greater context. All of this sounds really concerning, right? And that's because it is really concerning. I can guarantee you this technology will absolutely affect the human race in a greater way than any prior technology has. Don't take my word for it. A lot of people much smarter than me have thought the same. It's already starting to transform our lives. You're watching this video because it was recommended to you by a recommender engine that's built on artificial intelligence. To compound the matter, this tech is being developed at a rate faster than basically any other invention in human history, with an unclear trajectory and, quite frankly, unclear motives, right? Just look at the countless scandals that every single big tech firm has been embroiled in to prove that their motives are the furthest thing from being altruistic. We need to hold the people who are building this technology to a higher standard, as they are the ones who are ultimately shaping what our future looks like and how this technology will impact people. It's capable of incredible good, right? But it also is capable of incredible suffering, as we've seen in the authoritarian surveillance states that are just popping up all over the world of late. Maybe we need a clear trajectory and clear motives before we continue to develop this technology. Maybe we need some answers to the philosophical questions that define our future before we run headfirst into it.
Moral is, don't be a dick, dick!